Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our inspirational interviews. I'm here with Joanne Lauzon, and I'm super excited to have her here today because we have actually kind of similar backgrounds, but have gone in different directions to share healing with the world in different ways. And so I'm really excited to talk with you today. Before we get into that, though, I just want to remind folks that are watching live, we're going live using StreamYard. So if you can grant permission to StreamYard for us to see your names, we welcome you to participate in this conversation via the chat. So ask questions or, share things that come up for you along the way during our conversation. So Joanne is, do you just go by Jo?
You can call me Jo, Joanne, Jo Girl, okay, whatever. Yeah.
Multiple names. It's a creative situation.
Jo's good.
So Joanne is an artist and creative play coach, guiding women to connect with and nurture their innate creativity so they can experience more joyful, playful lives.
Yes!
I love it.
Yay! I know. I love it too.
Can you start by just introducing yourself a little bit further and explaining how you came to do the work that you're doing right now, to be who you are at this point in time?
Yeah, for sure. So I have always been aware of my creativity. Like always, for as long as I can remember, I had some sort of mark making tool in my hand and I was doodling on my notebooks for school and doodling on my walls and doodling on chalkboards and my mom's whiteboard at her office. Like no surface was safe from me and my marks. I knew, throughout high school, I was in the dance department. I was in the drama department. I was in the art department. I was taking photography and drafting. Like I just knew I lived and breathed creativity. I wanted to make stuff and create. So when I was applying to universities, I was applying to things like film and television production, architecture, journalism, advertising, which is actually what I ended up going into at my local college here. And also around that time, I had been exposed to Macintosh computers. My stepfather was very big in that world. And so I already had a really good basis for design. And I was using tools like Aldus PageMaker and Freehand and all these really cool design tools that allowed me to create in a digital space. So after I graduated, I started my own business right away doing publication design, and that evolved into branding and website design and just, making stuff look good for clients. That was in 1992. So a long time ago. It's been a lot of years. And then I had a few side steps. I certified as a personal trainer and worked with women to get their bodies into shape and to work on their mindset around wellness and well-being and health and nutrition. And it was during that time when I was working very intimately with these women that I realized in conversation with them that when we reach a certain point in our lives, we tend to lose touch with who we truly are and what makes us happy and what lights us up. And it was in that time that I developed my program called Live Your Spirit. And I evolved my fitness business into what I was calling at the time happiness coaching. So oftentimes I would work with these women and run them through a 45-minute workout. And then we would spend 15 or 20 minutes doing happiness coaching, going through this Live Your Spirit program. And that was where I decided that people, women, because that's my target audience, needed to reconnect with what brings them joy and not ignore or dismiss obligations and expectations, but learn how to better manage them so that your own needs and your own personal values and beliefs and your own cravings and those inner gifts that we all have can shine and fit into the rest of your life. So I did personal training for about 4 years and I was just itching to get back to the creative space. So I returned to my graphic design business, did that for a handful of more years. And then I was really craving what I call analog creativity. like, going back to that mark making that I did as a kid, everything just became so digital so quickly that I think I lost touch with the tactile joys of creativity. So I started dabbling in modern calligraphy with nibs and ink and hand lettering. And then I got out my old watercolor kits and started playing with that. And then I took an acrylic mixed media course. So I really re-immersed myself into this analog creativity, I call
And
it.
did you feel more and more like yourself as you did that? Were
Yes,
you like,
I was
oh yeah,
like,
that's me?
oh my goodness, this feels so much better. But I'm taking time away from my digital business and my clients to do this stuff that's really fun and lovely, and it fills me up. And my boyfriend at the time would often say, like, you are a totally different person and you have a totally different energy around you when you are creating, like when you're doodling, when you're painting, when you're doing calligraphy, like you just have this whole Zen state around you. And that really, really resonated with me. So I started doing more of it, sharing all of that on like Instagram and Facebook. And soon enough, people were asking me like, wow, this is really amazing. I see how you're lighting up when you're doing this stuff. I love what you're sharing. Can you teach me how to do these things? So then, my entrepreneur mind was like, well, heck yes, I can teach you how to do these things. So then my workshops and classes and women's art retreat weekends came to be. And that's really what I've been doing ever since. And that was, I guess I started those in about 2014. So yeah, so my business now is really just helping women, like you said, recognize their innate creativity and learn how to nurture it and savor it and use it to bring them that sense of joy, use it to de-stress, use it to, think differently, have clarity, build better relationships. Like the benefits are countless, as you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for folks that don't know, my background is also in the arts, and Joe and I have connected over this. I was an art teacher for 11 years prior to becoming a health coach. And are we still here? Yeah. Okay.
I'm here.
Okay. My computer just went blank for a second.
All right.
So much of what you are sharing resonates with me, and in terms of health and well-being. And I used to think if I could just get people to, when I was teaching yoga, I felt like so many people I saw were closed off to truly being in their bodies. So I was helping them be embodied.
Yes.
But then I also was like, so many people are not aware of their creative potential, or they say things like, I don't have a creative bone
in my body.
Right.
Yes.
So one of the things that I love that you just stated is that I like helping women get in touch with their creativity. And at the very top of your website, you state you are creative. So talk a little bit about how we help people see their own creative potential when they might be thinking, and some of you watching might be thinking, what is she talking about? I'm not creative.
Yeah. I think the very first thing that needs to be addressed is our definition of creativity, right? We think that creativity is a pretty marker or a paintbrush or a violin or a sewing machine. Like, and those things are true, of course, but creativity really is about the power to make a choice. That's my interpretation of the word creativity. And so, of course, we are all born with creativity. We make choices thousands of times every day, and those choices are creative choices. We create the meals on our plates. We create our outfit for the day. We create the desire to learn particular things to advance us in our careers. Like, we are constantly, very subconsciously, making creative choices every moment of every day of our lives, right?
We can't not be creative.
We can't not be creative. There's I think it's Earl Nightingale, if I'm not mistaken. He's an oldie-timey guy in the personal development space, like from the 40s and 50s. He has a great program actually called Lead the Field, and it's all about attitude. And I've listened to it so many times. It's a really great course. But he says something like, and I think it's his quote, that, how does it go? In this moment, we are the sum total of every choice we've ever made. It can be a little bit confronting when you think about it that way, especially when you're feeling like maybe you're in a stuck time or a dark time. But, that truly is the case. We are this very moment, I'm here because of every choice I've ever made. And every one of those choices was a creative choice.
Yeah.
So when we look at, so automatically, we can grandfather every single human being who ever lived, who ever will live as a creative being. It's just the reality. Brené Brown speaks a lot about there's no such thing as creatives and non-creatives. We are all creatives. It just depends how we choose to use our creativity. Yeah. So now we can flip that into the more artistic creative space. And again, I truly believe that we all have artistic creativity within us. But we assume that artistic creativity has to look a certain way. Like I said earlier, a marker, a paintbrush, a violin, a sewing machine, all of those classic definitions of artistic creativity. And I don't think that for the most part, we give ourselves permission or allowance or the time or space or energy to explore as many different things as we can to figure out which ones click and which ones stick, right? For me, it's painting and illustration and drawing and doodling and making marks. But for you, it might have, you are a musician. So for you, it was singing and songwriting, right? And probably a dozen other things at least.
Yeah, I'm also a potter.
Yes, that's right too.
Professional potter. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but we get stuck. And I recently developed and ran a webinar about our 5 obstacles to creativity. And because things come in our path that block us from even trying. And those obstacles are typically time, space, confidence, inspiration, and dedication. And those things can show up for us in ways that we don't even realize that they're showing up for us and blocking us. And those obstacles would be true for any form of artistic creativity. Yeah. I mean,
I love that quote that you shared too. It pairs really nicely with one that I use a lot in teaching habit evolution. And James Clear is somebody, he wrote Atomic Habits. Are you familiar with that?
I'm familiar with the book, but it's on my list. I need to read it. Yes.
Awesome. So one of the things that he says in Atomic Habits is that each decision we make, every choice that we make, is a vote for who we're becoming. So who it is that we're living into being next. So that's kind of like the other half of that. Like you're saying every decision you've made in your past has led you to where you are right now. Yeah, here we are. And then James Clear is saying, going forward. And it gives us a lot of ownership of like, what are the choices that I'm making and how are they voting for who I'm becoming next? Because like it or not, we're always changing, right?
Yes.
That's happening. So that creative process, I love that awareness of like, we're engaging with it, whether we want to admit it or not. It's there.
Exactly. Yeah, it's there. It's there.
And I think there is something so beautiful back to what you were talking about of coming back to what you're calling analog arts, or what did you say? Analog
creativity. Yeah.
Creativity.
Like stuff with your hands. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there is something that's so important that we're losing in our culture right now, which is making things with our hands. And whether that's food or it's pottery or painting or playing a musical instrument, our hands are so neat. Like our intelligence in our hands is something that we're losing as a species as we go to everything being digital. And there's a connection that happens with our hands and our hearts and our brains that doesn't happen if we're just on technology and just, texting or whatever, our poor thumbs, right?
Yes.
So, and so talk a little bit about, you talk about less self-doubt and building more confidence through this and through getting in touch with our creativity and how that works in today's world, like of technology
Yeah.
and going
Yeah.
and
Well, I mean, we do need to break our addiction to screens and to our phones and to consuming content rather than creating, right?
yeah.
That I think it was Marie Forleo who originally said consume before you create. But I know Chase Jarvis in his book Creative Calling, excellent book, also uses it and credits her, of course. But so that's kind of a practice that I like to use for myself, but also try to instill in my students and my participants. And that is like break the addiction to consuming content and instead replace it with something that you can create, even if it's just 20 minutes a day. So I encourage people to just get back to basics. Like one of the best ways that I help my clients build that confidence is to start from scratch, forget everything that you know about creativity, you know, in whatever, what's the word I'm looking for? Like in whatever medium you choose, go back to basics. So I often get my clients to just simply draw lines in an art journal. Just draw lines with some random tool. It can be a pencil, a pen, a marker, crayon, pastel, paintbrush. Just draw lines and let yourself be okay with a wobbly line. You know, instead of drawing circles, draw blobs, because the definition of the word circle is that it's a perfect circle. So get rid of that definition, get rid of that inhibition that comes around perfection and making sure that you're doing it right and making sure that you're happy with the result. Just get all that crap out of the way, go back to basics, and find yourself in that Zen state where you're just making marks and you're breathing as you draw those lines and you're breathing as you draw those blobs. And you look at the texture of the pastel, or you look at how the line width changes when you use a brush pen or a brush. And it's being observant in those moments and letting that output be whatever it ends up being instead of judging it and placing expectations on it, right? And that does wonders in terms of letting my clients and letting people be okay with that starting point, like just going right back to ground zero, to step one. It's like learning to walk again, right? And then learning to run.
It sounds like a real practice in presence.
Absolutely. Yes.
Present.
Presence and mindfulness. Yeah,
Without,
exactly. I'm just about to close registration. I know we were going to talk about this later, but I'm just about to close registration tonight on a brand new course. And it's actually called Becoming Consciously Creative. And that's exactly what we're doing over 6 weeks, like just starting at the basics and building up that mindful presence, that mindful observation, letting inspiration come from everyday moments, and then seeing if we can translate that into interesting marks and interesting colors and patterns and textures in our art journals. Like just cutting the crap and getting back to what's truly inside and honoring that innate creativity.
Yeah. One of the things that I love about what you offer is that it's not focused on commodification. You're not saying, I'll teach you a skill that then you can sell stuff and make money. It's really about self-care from the creative act, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And
absolutely.
I love that. And in a world where kind of the highest compliment, I mean, I've dealt with this a lot in my creative pursuits, is that a lot of folks feel like the highest compliment they could give is like, you could sell that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I'm an entrepreneur for a reason. I need to make a living, but I don't want to compromise joy for doing work that I don't love doing. Like I'm a big believer in the whole, like, if you love what you do, it's not work. Right. And sometimes I sit back and I look at my life and I'm like, wow, like I'm doing exactly what I always didn't even realize I wanted to do. Like I'm doing it. I'm living the dream. So just back to your point. Yes. And I specifically try not to say that I'm going to teach my clients how to create art. I just want to teach them how to create and how to be creative and how to embrace that natural creativity. So even in this 6-week course, I've been very clear in my conversations around the course and in my marketing materials, like, I'm not teaching you how to make art. That's not what this is about. This is about embracing what you've already got and learning how to use it, and clearing those obstacles that we talked about earlier, so that you can tap into it and enjoy the benefits of regular creative play as a form of self-care.
Yeah. Yeah, because it creates more of a fulfilling life and a full experience of each experience, right? Each day.
Yeah. And when we find ourselves in those Zen moments, that's when we allow our bodies to relax, like our physical bodies to relax. We can daydream, we can get lost in thought. That's where growth happens, when we discover something new about ourselves. It's where healing happens, like super powerful healing happens in those Zen moments. And of course, all of those benefits have a ripple effect throughout your entire life, your career, your business, your relationships, your well-being, how you parent, like how you show up for your friends and your family, not to mention your own personal, like, psychological and mental and emotional well-being. Like, it's time people start talking about the benefits of creative play. So that's why I'm showing up.
Awesome. Well, thank you for championing that in the world.
You're very welcome, and thank you to you as well.
Yeah, it's so powerful. Yeah, and I just want to, I guess, tie these pieces together of the self-care piece of the creativity is in the expression and in the experience, where there is a practice of presence, where there is a connection with creativity, but then that has the ripple effect of that, the nourishment. And I talk about this a lot in terms of like the habits that we teach in the Vitality Circle of, when you are deeply nourished, then how you show up to everything else in your life changes for the better.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
And it's a ripple effect. And that's really what the world needs more of right now, is more happy, healthy people that are sharing that happiness and joy. Not that life is easy, not that everything's butterflies and roses,
but why
that
not
we have
implement
these outlets?
And why not implement practices that are very accessible, don't have to cost money, if anything. Like, you can do anything that I'm talking about with a pencil and printer paper, or the back of a menu or newsprint, or whatever. Like, it's very accessible. So why not try to implement practices in our day and in our lives that can minimize the stress and the chaos and the confusion and the overwhelm, and just like that end of day, plunk into bed going like, where did this day go? Like, I did nothing for myself.
Yeah. So along those lines, like, yes, while people could do things with materials they have laying around, it is really helpful to have somebody to guide you and invite you into practices. And I'm sure it goes well beyond just what people have laying around their houses too. But tell us a little bit about what you offer and how people can find you and work with you.
Yeah. So I already mentioned my brand new course. It's Becoming Consciously Creative. Registration closes tonight. So we got this interview in the nick of time.
And sign up.
Yes. It's becomingconsciouslycreative.com. There's a coupon code. It's 50% off my usual price, because I will be running this course a couple of times a year, but because this is my founding launch, I'm offering it at 50% off, and there's a split pay option as well.
Maybe we can put that
accessible.
Maybe we can put that all in the chat.
Yeah, we can do that for sure. And then outside of that, I also offer a membership site called Camp, and Camp stands for Creative Awakenings, Mindfulness and Play. And it's a membership site where it's more of a DIY, choose your own adventure. There's a whole library and a growing library of pre-recorded video classes. So they are more artistic creativity, but all analog creativity. So anything from lettering and doodling and to watercolor and some acrylic stuff and mixed media. I've had some guest artists come in and lead different workshops as well. We do weekly picnics every Thursday at noon Eastern time, and we really just get together and have a fun chat and eat our lunch together. And I answer questions, and sometimes I'll throw in a fun campy activity. Like it's more of it's camp. Like people go, they show up, they have a fun time doing lots of things, and they nurture that creative energy. So yeah, there's a bunch of folks in there. We've got about 60 members in there currently. So that's
wonderful. And some
place
people that are part of this group are in camp.
Yes. Yeah. I don't think I have clicked all the right things because I'm not seeing if anybody's chatting. I'm not seeing any
I think
of that,
Tina's here. She hasn't given us permission to see her name, but she said, "Hey, lovelies, and camp is wonderful." So I'm assuming
yes. Yeah, I'm seeing it now. And Kelly is saying happy Tuesday. Okay, I just had to click a different thing. Yes. So I guess I have to, where do I leave a comment? Maybe I don't get to leave a comment.
After we're done recording.
After I'll put the URL in.
Put all your stuff in. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are both offerings that I have online. So anybody around the world can join. But
will you say a little more about the Becoming Consciously Creative, the one that you're just launching? Like what's the format? And
so Becoming Consciously Creative is 6 weeks to intentionally create a more joyful, inspired life. And it's a live 6 weeks. So I'm with participants every step of the way. Each week, so very first thing, Thursday mornings, the week's content will be delivered. So it's a progression over the 6 weeks. The first week is all about setting the intention. So creating the time, creating the space, looking at those 5 obstacles, figuring out how they're showing up for you and how to clear them. So we work very much in that first week, just setting ourselves up for success for the weeks that follow. And then the remaining weeks, like I said, are a progression. So we're starting really, really basic in week 2 with just making very simple marks with black tools. So pencils, markers, pastel, charcoal, just black, because we want to keep it super simple. We're not worrying about color palettes and things like that. And then, so each week you get a video overview from me, so describing each of the day's activities, and then there's a workbook with each of the day's activities as well. So each week that's the content that you're delivered. But we also have a midweek live check-in. So the content comes on Thursdays, and then the following Mondays, we'll just get together on a Zoom call for 30 minutes to just check in with each other. There's also a built-in non-Facebook community. So that's available to participants to check in with one another, ask questions, share their activities, things like that. And then week 2, we move into making marks with colored things. So that's when we start to bring in colored pastels and colored markers and maybe watercolor markers, but we're still not touching the paints just yet. And then week 3 is when we start to play with watercolor and acrylic paints. These are all things that are going to be done in an art journal. So not an overwhelming substrate like a canvas or even watercolor paper. We're just using art journals to keep things small and not overwhelming, and keep those inhibitions at bay, and allow ourselves to feel a little bit vulnerable. And then in the 5th week, we start looking at different textures. So collage and stamps and stencils, and just starting to add more layers to those marks that we've been learning all along. And in the very final week, we bring it all together and create kind of more mixed media pages with other textures, and just bringing it all together. And of course, there's glitter involved. So
you're brave. Glitter. After I taught art for 11 years, I was like, no.
Well, it's not happening in my space. So
it's not in your space. You don't have to.
They can use as much glitter as they want. Yes, yeah. But like iridescent paints and incorporating lettering into their mixed media. It's just, it's bringing it all together. So I'm really excited. This is a 6-week course that I've had lingering in my mind for years, probably 5 or 6 years. And I think I needed to go through a few things in my life and a few things in my business to really feel like I had the right components at the right time, to create it. And so, now's the time to do it. And I'm super excited. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, that sounds amazing. And I'm glad you've had such great enrollment too. You've had
Yeah, it's not a huge group. It keeps things nice and intimate. Yeah, I think by the time registration closes tonight, we'll have about 20. So that's perfect.
Great.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're watching and you're interested, you have to sign up by tonight.
That's right. Midnight Eastern.
Take a leap for creativity, see what happens.
Yes. Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being
Aw.
a guest today and sharing your passion for
Mhm.
creativity and creating more joy in our lives through
Thank you.
creativity. It's definitely something that's near and dear to my heart and
Mhm.
incorporated into the programs that I run as well.
Yes.
So we'll post links for everything with this interview. And if anybody has questions, you can post them with this interview too, because Joe's in our Facebook group. So
I am in the group. Yes, absolutely. I love answering questions. So thank you so much, Hannah, for inviting me to be here.
Yeah. Do you have any closing thoughts or anything you want to leave people with?
I just want to remind everybody watching that you do have creativity within you. Don't be afraid of it. I think a lot of people feel very vulnerable when it comes to creativity. But even if you could just observe your everyday moments that maybe you perform on autopilot, like one of my favorite things to do in the morning, I moved away from using a coffee pot to using a Keurig to now I'm using the pour over method. So like the paper cone and I'm pouring the coffee. And I love that moment in my day because it's intentional, right? I'm observing. I have to be present or that coffee's going everywhere. So I've been able to turn an everyday run of the mill autopilot activity into a creative experience and an observant and a present experience. I get to watch the coffee and create it and froth my milk and all that good stuff. So just if you could do anything, it would just be to observe those everyday moments and see them for the creative experiences that they are and just enjoy those moments.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Take
care. Really grateful.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Okay.